DeFi is kind of inherently bullshit. Like, if you have something that's returning, like 72% APR with no underlying business process, that's just some kind of naked bullshit, gambling, risk, Ponzi, whatever it is. There is no business process underneath that kind of stuff. So all of that, if it's not connected to some kind of fundamental value generating activity, all that you're looking at is random gambling activities dressed up as financial instruments used as test data to make sure that Ethereum works properly. There's nothing there but complicated mechanisms to obscure gambling plus test data. Every dollar that comes out is a dollar that somebody lost on the way in. And I got nothing against that kind of test data mindset. Like, okay, people want to do that stuff. You're either going to be a public chain that everybody can use or you're not. You're either going to censor transactions or you're not. You kind of have to make your peace with that. Very glad I'm not legally responsible for any of that. God help the miners if the US government ever gets its teeth out on this, stakers. But, one way or the other, we should not confuse any of that stuff with value generating activity. It's just gambling. And there's a lot of money to be made gambling, Forex trading, all the rest of that kind of stuff. This is gambling. But I think the notion that you have the ability to, let's say, get equity purchased in small startup companies using tokens, say at A round rather than having to wait for an ICO somewhere around their C or D round, those kinds of models where you can actually get innovation funding faster, easier, more rapidly. You can, wind up with like 1,000 company tokenization portfolios where you've got a tiny fragment of equity in, 1,000 company portfolio. Those kinds of things, I think, are where you start to get genuine innovation and genuine actually making money using the tools because it allows for better structuring of risk or earlier injection of capital. That's kind of where the real returns are going to come from on this stuff. And note that I'm not suggesting that things like the returns from treasuries are not real, but just they're the same as the real world returns. It's just a packaging of real world return. What I'm suggesting is that there is a domain where you can do a packaging of real world assets with lower transaction costs and better access to software that allows for the creation of new synthetic derivatives in things like startups, or that allows for the slashing of existing transaction costs in areas like real estate, and that those things are actually genuinely wealth generating by virtue of the fact that these things are brought on chain. So you wind up with this notion that you've got real world assets arranged in novel configurations that are impossible using older technology, and those new portfolios are the things that begin to generate actual returns from the presence of blockchain technology only 10 years after we invented it.